NBA regular season wrapped up Sunday. Lakers finished 7th, which means they host Minnesota on Tuesday with a 7 seed on the line. Loss sends them to the 8 seed game on Friday. Warriors blew out the Blazers to lock up the 6 seed. They'll take on the upstart Kings, who they beat the second to last game of the season. Of course, the Kings rested everyone. Golden State won the regular season series 3-1, though, at any rate. The 4-5 matchup in the West will feature the Suns and Clippers. In spite of being the 4 seed, the Suns are big favorites to win the West at plus 190. That series starts Sunday. Guys, I got to tell you something. You know why I think the Suns are such favorites? Because when you really look at, they had to thin out the depth, right? They had to thin out the depth to go get KD. The Suns are such big favorites because KD now occupies in people's minds the same position LeBron once did in people's minds in the NBA, meaning he's worth roughly, in people's imagination, 2 superstars. Like when LeBron was at his best, he was worth basically the second best guy times 2. Because whatever team he was on, you believed if he had a little help, until KD went to the Warriors. That's got ridiculous, right? But you believed if he got a little help in the end, he'd figure it out. That's where KD is. He reached such a level before the Achilles, and he finally got back there. KD finally got back there. He's not just accepting the tough defensive assignments. He's an elite defender. He's an excellent passer. He's the best scorer you ever want to see. It's him, Perk. He's the reason that people think he's twice as good as the next best guy.
Yeah, but again, Max, this is not golf or tennis or boxing. This is not an individual sport. You actually need a team. And I understand, right? KD is everything. Don't get it twisted. When it comes down to him being one of the best scorers of all time, I think he's that. When it comes down to him being a playmaker, I think he's underrated at that aspect. But when I look at this series and I look at the depth of the Clippers, even without Paul George, when I start looking at guys like Nicholas Batum and Covington and you have, Russell Westbrook, and you have all these wing defenders and guys that could play on the other end like a Norman Powell, you got to be very, very careful going into that series, especially when you're going against Ty Lue.
Well, you said the depth of the Clippers, even without Paul George. I agree with him with Paul. Without Paul George, I think it's the death of the Clippers, right? I mean, what's his status in this series?
Well, I mean, we're going to see what's going on with Paul George. He's begun to do a little bit more stuff, Ty Lue said the other day. And the thing to remember about the first round in particular is that it takes a million years to finish. So the Clippers play their first game against Phoenix on Sunday, and Perk has lived through this as a player. They might not play Game 3 of that series till the following
2024,
Sunday, right?
Yeah.
So, you could, in theory, have Paul George come back 2 weeks from now and maybe miss 2 games. So, which is a wild thing to think about. But with the advent of the play-in tournament, it's why it was important, I think, for the Clippers to get into the series. It gives them as much time as possible to get Paul George back on the court. And to Perk's point about having a team, I think the Warriors are going to win the West, as why you think the Suns are and Perk thinks the Lakers are, because I like the Warriors' collection of talent now that they're healthy better than anybody else. But this is all reasons why the West is as wide open as we've ever seen, because it's as mediocre as we've ever seen, frankly. And so everybody can pick a different team and have a good argument for it because there's no clear favorite.
Perk, I actually agree with Tim. I think I look at the West, and I think most seasons you can rule out almost every team. They have 0 shot to win the chip. Only a handful do. But this year in the West, I think there are legit 7 teams I can't rule out, not out of hand. But the one team I could see smoking everybody, like no one takes them 7, is the Suns. If the Suns, they haven't lost with KD. KD hasn't lost a game practically in 30 games. He's lost 2 games, right? If there's a team that just wipes out everyone, including in the East, I think it's the Suns. But I don't know that they make it out. Where are you with the West, Perk?
You know what? It is wide open, but it's all about matchups and it's all about what superstars get hot at the right time. Again, we could talk about KD, and rightfully so, and we could talk about Devin Booker. But why aren't we talking about Kawhi Leonard and how he's been looking over the last 2 months? He looked like Kawhi Leonard of old. So when I look at the superstars that are in the Western Conference alone, we talked about AD and how he's then put his name back in that conversation. It's wide open, and again, like Tim said, you can make an argument for any one of these teams. But this is why I think, not just in the West, but the playoffs overall is going to be some of the best playoff basketball we've seen in the last decade.
Couldn't agree more, Perk. I'm with you 100% on that. And as you mentioned, when you look at this setup with Kawhi Leonard is back to being Kawhi Leonard again. He has been maybe the best player in the league over the past month. He's been everything that the Clippers thought he was going to be. And if they can get Paul George back during this series, they match up really, really well with this Suns team, and I think it could be a really good series.
And with a kind of offense starter like Russell Westbrook, they haven't had a guy like Westbrook running the point. They tried to turn Kawhi into a point forward. That's not who he is naturally. The guy in these playoffs who has the most to gain from a legacy perspective is, in fact, Russell Westbrook. Because as the years go by and the details fade of this era, people will look back. If they win a championship with him on the Clippers, they'll look back and say, oh, hold on. He had 3 consecutive years of triple-doubles on average and won a championship? History will think of him in the play-in, but Rudy Gobert is not, at least not for the first game. Who's the pressure on now? Luka says he's happy in Dallas, while Dame has a clear plan for the Blazers offseason. Could either All-Star be on the move this offseason? And is Lamar going back to Baltimore? And did the Ravens actually save money by guaranteeing Odell Beckham $15 million? Let's go. And this just in. Timberwolves center Rudy Gobert has been hit with a 1-game suspension, sources tell ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski, for his verbal and physical altercation with a teammate in Sunday's win over the Pelicans. Gobert will travel to Los Angeles with the team, but will not play against the Lakers on Tuesday in the play-in tournament. This is wild to me. NBA champion Kendrick Perkins, our NBA Timmy Goodtimes. Tim Bontemps with me now. Tim, what's wild to me is, I get it if the league is suspending the guy. They spent all those firsts to get him. They overpaid for Rudy Gobert. You have a 1-game situation with the Lakers, the team suspending him? Does that strike you as odd?
Yeah, I mean, this whole situation is odd, Max. I mean, you look at what happened yesterday. The fact that Jaden McDaniels, the elite defensive forward for the Timberwolves, the fact that he broke his hand punching the wall, that was a complete non-story compared to the fact that you have Rudy Gobert, the guy that the Minnesota Timberwolves traded all these draft picks to get to remake their roster last summer, punching a teammate during the game when it's a winner-go-home game in terms of being in the 8 or 9 spot in the Western Conference playoffs, which is a huge difference because he gives you 2 chances to go home or 1. And now they're going into this game against Los Angeles Lakers, a team that punishes the rim inside, that is one of the most interior offensively oriented teams in the league, and they have one of the better rim protectors in the league not playing in the game because of it.
I got to say, Rudy Gobert, who, has had a very good defensive reputation, but Perk, in some moments in his career, like at the outbreak of COVID, I know it was a practical joke, but what's to worry about, guys, and gives everyone in the room coat. He punches his teammate. I know it was in the chest. Okay, let's not make too big a deal out of it, but right before a play-in game? The judgment is not good. How does this affect the actual game against the Lakers, do you think, Perk?
Oh, well, not only just the Lakers, but it affects the whole locker room. And from myself being on the outside looking in, this is something that has built up in that locker room. It seemed like, when you hear certain words like, y'all been letting him get away with too much, like his teammates actually feel that way about him. And whatever the case may be, they have some certain type of feelings, but this just came at the wrong time, right? You got an opportunity right in front of you to further your season, to make sure you get into the postseason. Now all of a sudden, one of your key guys is out, and rightfully so by Minnesota. You had to suspend him because you got to set some type of boundaries for your young stars to let them know that this is not acceptable. And so you can't put your hands on somebody and not think that there's not going to be consequences. So at the end of the day, do you want to see Rudy on the floor against the Lakers? Yes. But was it the right thing to do for as Minnesota suspended them? Yes.
Tim, how does it affect the game?
Well, like I said, I mean, you have the Lakers who attack the rim as much as any team in the league, get to the line a ton. They draw a lot of fouls, and they score a lot of points inside. And now they're going to have the Wolves are not going to have Rudy Gobert out there. And you saw in the second half of that game against New Orleans yesterday, I know Perk is obviously a guy who played a long time in the league, is a big fella, would know. Nathan Knight came in for a couple minutes in the third quarter, and he got run out of there real quick, and then went back to Karl Towns right away. And Karl Towns is a guy who tends to get in foul trouble. he's a guy who commits fouls over time. And now you're playing a huge game, and you've got Anthony Davis and LeBron James and Austin Reeves and all these guys on the Lakers who draw a lot of fouls. They're going to be going right at Cat from the opening tip of the game because they get him in foul trouble. Now there's nobody behind him inside for the Wolves, and that's on top of the fact, again, can't stress enough, this Jaden McDaniels injury is a very significant thing. He's one of the better perimeter defenders in the league. I have him on my second-team all-defense ballot that I'm submitting today. He's a really key piece, and now he's not playing
the two best defensive players, aren't
I mean, it's just a huge swing in this game.
Perk?
And to add on to that, I believe Nas Reed is out as well.
Yeah, Nas Reed isn't playing either. Yep.
So Perk, meantime, everyone's talking about, hey, the Lakers have to avoid the play-in and this and that, but in another way, now, maybe it's the best of all worlds for them. They get to, because they had to play with playoff intensity. Here's another one. They have to play with playoff intensity. They are unlikely to lose, and yet it's not the same kind of level of stress as if you have all your best defenders in the game. Is this working out? Did the Lakers kind of luck up here? Seems like the basketball gods smile on L.A.
Well, the league messed up by giving the Lakers an opportunity, and this is exactly why I got them going to the finals and representing the Western Conference. They're going to win this game tomorrow against the Minnesota Timberwolves. And you think about the first-round matchup against the Memphis Grizzlies, and no offense to Jaren Jackson Jr., I think he's been balling out of control. But history tells us that he has been in foul trouble a lot and can't be on the floor. So when I look at them not having Steven Adams and Brandon Clark, that is a problem, especially the way that Anthony Davis has been playing. The blessing in disguise for the whole Lakers organization was LeBron James going out and Anthony Davis having to rise to the occasion and actually change the narrative and the conversation about him and actually putting him back in that elite conversation with Giannis and Jokic and Embiid. The Lakers right now that I'm witnessing and watching with this duo and the pieces Rob Pelinka added around them, I got them going to the finals.
The only thing I'll say real quick, I agree with you, Perk. I think the Lakers win this game tomorrow, but Anthony Edwards and Karl Towns were incredible in that game yesterday against the Pelicans. They have the ability to win this game in L.A. It's a huge spot for them if they go out and play like they did against the Pelicans. I think the Lakers win, but it's a big spot for those young guys to prove
I was going to say something else about the Lakers. I'll say that later in the show. Anthony Edwards is kind of the most slept-on potential face of the NBA, I think, in the NBA. The guy is 21 years old.